Welcome to the AMA. Can I hope everyone can hear me okay? Destiny, welcome to the server. You're currently muted. But thank you for coming along. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, excellent. So as I understand it, you've been here before. But the way it works is we just have a bunch of user submitted questions. And I'm just going to run through them with you if that's okay with you. So before we begin, would you like to give an introduction?
Yeah, I'm Destiny. I do politics on Twitch and YouTube. I'm anything from a neolib to a SOCDEM, I guess, depending on what side of the aisle you're on. And yeah, I scream at people on the internet.
Okay, great. Thank you. So if it's okay with you, we'll just jump straight into the questions. So we'll start off simple. Rel wants to know milk first or cereal first?
Cereal first.
Okay, excellent. And moving on to a bit more of a serious topic, Tan's question. Are there any aspects of the USSR or China, whether economic, social, or political, that you consider desirable or worthy of replication in the US?
So there's a couple of huge problems. One is that my history sucks. And then two is it's really hard to disentangle the like positive effects of one system versus like the positive effects of another. So for instance, like I've seen people argue back and forth on like, well, socialism or whatever version of socialism you'd say the USSR trying to implement it was, at least it helped the country in some ways. And then I've heard other people say like, oh, well, like industrialization period is going to help any of these countries. Of course, it doesn't matter what economic system they've had. I know I got a guy in my chat that links me a ton of studies and shit. Rage Pope. I don't know if anyone's heard of him, but like supposedly the regardless of industrialization, the USSR and China were behind where they should have been compared to other capitalist countries. And then other people argue that that's because of World War II, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know. I wish I had like a better answer, but like that shit is so fucking complicated. I'm not entirely sure. And then you also have to take, you also have to like look at like the difference between like the ideals of the USSR and Mao's China versus like the in practice what happened. Yeah, I think right now, I think the United States has enough it can copy from modern countries that I don't think I would look into the past to try to find things that we should copy. Like, for instance, like healthcare or time off or different redistribution of wealth systems that like other Western European countries have are probably things that the US could look to copy rather than trying to go back to the, 50s, 60s, 70s to figure out, what was China and Russia doing at the time. Because yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Moving on to a bit of a different note, Noam Chomsky Gaming asks, what measures should we take to prevent another person like Trump from taking power? Should we ban parties which attempt to subvert democracy or try to destroy democratic norms?
I kind of think you have to just run it. I think that you just have to let the system do what the system does. I mean, I don't, it sounds weird, but technically we kind of have to be okay with somebody like Trump, I think, taking power because I mean, like that's how your system works. I mean, he was voted in. I think that I think that if you're looking to fight against stuff like that, but you still want to remain kind of like loyal to the ideas of like liberalism and democracy, your best bet is probably actually to just get more people to vote, in my opinion. So there's the small dumb things like getting rid of like gerrymandering and resisting voter suppression and blah 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 blah. But I think there are bigger things we could do. Like in Australia, you're required to vote. I'm 100% like red pilled on the idea that voting should be a requirement. I think that if you can change the number of people that are engaged in our system by forcing people to vote, I think that you would have a radically different type of legislature and head of state at every election cycle. That's my opinion. So yeah, I mean, if you're somebody that wants to like, oh, like people like Trump scare me, but I don't want to become like an authoritarian to prevent somebody like Trump from ever coming up again. I think that the more people you have voting, the less likely it is that Republicans are going to win elections. So that should be the thing that you focus on. Because I mean, if you look at like election strategy, it seems like Republicans, their strategy like almost principally revolves around like reducing the amount of turnout as much as possible, changing election days to weird days, not making it like a federal holiday or whatever where everybody gets a day off, resisting like mail-in and absentee voting. Yeah.
Okay. Our next question comes from Tan. And it's kind of staying on that note of Trump and kind of Republican kind of tendencies. And they ask, in the post-Trump era, what do you think is a direction that Republican Party will take? Do you think they will keep the populist rhetoric or will they return?
The entire world is waiting on that answer. I don't have an answer. I have no idea. I'm so curious. Like, there's like 2 or 3 huge paths that the Republican can take. One is every new statesman becomes like a Trump light person, where everybody wants to kind of emulate his rhetoric to ride on the wave of the immense popularity that he enjoyed under his administration, despite his relatively lackluster rule. The second thing is maybe Republicans are like, fuck it, we're gonna go back to being neocons. We're gonna go back to being Bush era Republicans, and then you just never hear about that Trump stuff again. The few that support him eventually are voted out, and then you just go back to kind of the normal Republican Party, or maybe the Republican Party tears itself apart, and you see all of these old people go back to like a whole new party. You've got like Trump talking about forming the Patriot Party. You already have kind of an incompatibility right now with a lot of the Trumpish Republicans and then the establishment Republicans. So yeah, I don't know. I'm super curious.
Okay.
But like that was the rest of the world. Yeah, I wish I had a better answer, but
yeah. Our next question comes from Whiskey, and they want to know, do you think Biden will fulfill his promise to pass the Equality Act in his first 100 days in office?
I have no idea. He's already been pretty bold with all of the EAs and EOs going out, but in terms of like what will he actually get done, I'm not sure. I also don't know how much of this hangs off of like the impeachment in the Senate, like what that process is going to entail as well. So,
all right. Our next question comes from Whiskey again, staying on that topic of Biden, and they ask, do you see Biden's election as America veering left, or is America rejecting Trump's populism?
So populism can be left or right, is my understanding of it. So the question was, is Biden making the country veer left, or?
Yeah, whether you think Biden's election is a sign of America veering left, or a rejection of Trump's populism.
Dude, I don't know, man. This country like swings like super hardcore in terms of where we were at politically and then where we're at now. I don't know if that's actually healthy. I think that we'll know a lot more after Biden's term, or in the next 2 years, I guess, what happens. Because like we just swung from like an all-right legislature on both halves and a Supreme Court to now we have like an all-left legislature on both halves and now a left-leaning president. I don't know where the fuck we go to this. Americans are bipolar as fuck when it comes to their political leanings, I guess. I guess it'll depend on how Biden's 2 years go.
Okay. And staying on that topic of kind of Democrats, Snowy Mustrat wants to know, out of the 2020 Democrats who ran for president, who are your top 3 in which you would pick based on policy and electability, and who are your top 3 based on policy alone?
On policy and electability, well, if we're factoring in electability, I just have to go with the most popular ones, right? I believe that Biden was number 1. Obviously, he won. 2 and 3 are really hard because all of the moderates kind of like coalesced into the Biden vote. It seems like the obvious answer to number 2 would be Bernie, but it feels like Bernie had a hard time overcoming that like 30% hump. So I don't know, man. I want to say like Warren / Bernie for 2 and 3 maybe. If I had to guess, but I don't hold me to that in terms of just like policy and electability. In terms of policy alone, I think I actually liked Pete's approach to policy generally, although I don't know if this kind of selectability, but like Pete is really young, so it's hard to know how much he could actually get done. And for the little bit of time he did spend in office, he has not handled his administration's like big ordeals as well as he could have. You know, the whole police chief firing and everything. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to say. I'm a big fan of taking a left-leaning approach to things, but like I feel like a lot of people way off to the left are a little bit delusional when it comes to economic policy. So like I love Bernie to death and I admire how far left he wanted to push things, but I'm not like a massive protectionist, and I don't think that we can have like infinite money printers for the country. Although Republicans definitely hype up how bad deficits are and everything. So yeah, I think I appreciate like kind of like a more pragmatic approach, kind of like I guess Pete kind of talked about, although I don't know how much he would have actually enacted of that. But yeah, so I'm gonna be there, I guess.
Okay, and moving on from kind of the electoral politics onto more international relations focused questions, Tan wants to know, Do you think the US will maintain its role as the central geopolitical actor in the 21st century, or will the mantle be passed over to China?
I mean, China wants it, although I think they probably still have some progress to make. This is like a very broad, general question. This again, these are hard questions. Fuck. My kind of like my thoughts are, I feel like the faster Africa comes online and everything like starts rolling with that continent, I feel like the quicker that happens, the more powerful China will become because they've invested so much more on that continent than the United States has. So maybe China becoming like kind of like the new like head order the world actually revolves around Africa more than anything going on in Europe or Asia. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously the United States wants to hold on to its position. Biden is obviously trying to make strides back in that direction. Whether or not the United States can hold on, I mean, I don't. Obviously, it seems it's either going to be the U.S. or China, right? It doesn't seem like there's a European country that's going to step up and do it. Maybe if the EU had its shit together more, the EU as a body could. But yeah, that's a big we'll see, I guess.
Okay. And moving on from that topic entirely, Natsuki Marks wants to know, what are your thoughts on neo-pronouns?
I don't know. I'm not a big fan of them.
Okay.
I don't mind using they them, but neopronouns start to get a little bit silly to me. Like the whole point of a pronoun is that you have kind of like a general way to refer to something, right? Like that's what a pronoun is, as opposed to a proper noun that actually refers to a place. Like I've ran into people that have unique neopronouns, and at that point, aren't those just proper nouns? Like you're literally making a name for something. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it. It seems kind of silly to me, but maybe my opinion. Maybe I'll change on that in the next few years. Who knows?
Okay. Our next question comes from Rockpile, and they want to know, what politically/philosophically focused books have you read that you would recommend?
What politically/philosophically focused book? Fuck reading books. Honest to God, I should read more, but I don't because I'm a lazy piece of shit and I stream too much. In terms of like recent stuff I've read, like the only thing I can think of is there's a book called Lying About Hitler. If you ever want to argue with Holocaust deniers, it gives a really interesting perspective on like proving that the Holocaust happened. That's probably the most. Oh, and then I guess something a little bit more recent. There's a book by Eaton Hurst, I think is his name. It's called Politics is for Power. And that's a very interesting book on how to have like a little bit more of an applied approach in real life to acquiring political power rather than just like screaming at each other on the internet, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, can I say something real quick?
Yep.
Okay, just as I see people mentioning this in the AMA chat, the idea that the American Overton window is so much further to the right than in Europe is absolute fucking delusional fantasy. And I don't know where this meme started from or who spreads these memes around that like Bernie Sanders would be a centrist in Europe. It is absolutely not true. It is the dumbest fucking comment I've ever heard in my entire life. Like on some ends, the United States is very center compared to the rest of Europe, or right even when it comes to economic policy. Like we don't do paid time off. We don't have fucking maternity leave. Our healthcare doesn't exist. But on the other hand, if you were to take like our immigration policy to most European countries, they would fucking lose their fucking minds. Like America is definitely like a bit more right leaning than a lot of European countries, but the idea that like all of our most left leaning candidates would just be centrist in Europe, this is an idea that is so stupid it could only come from other Americans or Europeans who spend too much time on the American internet. All right, sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. And now I know you kind of said your history wasn't that great earlier, but hopefully this is an easier question. MU57Y wants to know, who is your favorite 20th century US president?
Who is my dude? I have no fucking idea. I'm not even gonna pretend to try to answer that. I'll say Obama because you know what? Hell yeah, because that was a guy that I remember, and yeah, that's all I can say about that.
Okay. Our next question comes from UU Fred, and they want to know, what changes would you like to see in criminal justice policy in the USA?
Changes in criminal justice policy. I think that our criminal justice focus is way too much on retribution versus like rehabilitation. So like things that could reduce the is it recidivization? I think is what I'm looking for. The recidivization rate, like how much people reoffend, and things that integrate people into society better. I think would be vastly superior policies to like very weird like 3-strike rules and shit we have. That's like one small thing. The biggest critique I have of like U.S. like jails or the prison system, I guess, probably comes more from like how we do drugs. I think that we waste a lot of prison space. I think we waste a lot of police manpower. I think we waste a lot of courtroom time prosecuting people for drug related charges. And I think almost all of that needs to go away. So my chief criticism is probably going to rest like in the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, on the way that they do scheduling on drugs. The whole war on drugs has been like atrocious. And I think getting rid of that concept would go like a really far way in improving so many different like areas of the United States.
Okay, good answer. Our next question comes from Maximus, and they want to know, how did your mum react to the recent riots? Does she disavow Trump now?
No, my mom's on board with they were Antifa people.
Okay. Our next question comes from PMC, and they want to know, do you think Julian Assange should be pardoned?
Fuck Assange. Not in the US. If they want to pardon him somewhere else, sure, but I don't like Assange. He's like a propaganda fuck that hates the US. Like, fuck that guy. Yeah, there are better arguments to be made for somebody like Snowden than somebody like Assange.
Okay. Our next question comes from the CEO of Cybernetics, and they want to know, broadly speaking, what is your opinion on social democracies such as Norway or Finland?
I mean, they seem based. Does anybody think different?
All right. So moving on from that, Tan wants to know, going forward, do you see political extremism from the left or the right to be a greater threat?
I don't know. That's a hard one. I'm not sure. It feels like from the right is generally more damaging because it tends to be more racialized and it tends to like aim itself negatively against a lot of society in ways that can, I think, demonstrably harm society. So, for instance, economically, I think that right-leaning tax policy is very, very, very bad, and their reluctance to like engage in more redistributive models probably hurts a lot of people. In terms of social policy, like I think that generally their social agenda is usually pretty bad. So being like anti-abortion, being like anti-LGBT rights, Trump trying to strip rights from trans people and whatnot. I think all of that is like pretty shitty. Yeah. And then like left-leaning people haven't been in charge long enough to like really fuck shit up. But I mean, they could get there. Who knows? We'll see. I mean, if the Jimmy Dores and the Kyle Kalinskis, were in charge of things, I'm sure I'd have a lot of negative shit to say about how they run things as well. So,
all right. And staying on that kind of topic of left to right divide, Snowy Mustrat wants to know, what do you have against lefties? It almost feels like you rail against them harder than the alt-righters. It's fine if you disagree with them, but it seems counterproductive to keep arguing with lefties when the conservatives actually threaten our democracy.
They just poison political discourse generally. Like most of them are very dumb. Most of their econ takes are very bad. Most of them don't understand capitalism well enough to criticize it. And then the worst part is that I end up looking bad because then when I go on shows or when I argue with conservatives, they try to make me defend like all of these ridiculously fucking brain dead lefty takes on like economic shit. And then it's just very frustrating for me. It makes my job harder. So when conservatives act stupid, that's good because it's part of the group that I'm attacking. When lefties act stupid, it's dumb because now I have to spend so much time differentiating myself from some dipshit that thinks that, I don't know, that like the existence of billionaires is by default like a moral evil or some stupid shit or whatever crazy shit lefties are talking about at the time.
Okay. And approaching from the other side of that issue, Blip wants to know, what is your opinion on the controversy surrounding right-wingers and social media platforms?
It's a really hard one. I don't have a good answer for this. It sucks, but like my personal standards for deplatforming have always been, I don't like misinformation. I think it poisons public discourse. I think it is the destroyer of anything that could ever be considered good under any type of moral framework or any type of like political analysis. Like I just don't see there being a benefit at all to people that just spread misinformation. But I think that comes from, unfortunately, I think that comes from all sides of the political aisle right now online. You're just inundated with so much incorrect shit that I don't know. I don't know how you deal with that. My like I said, I always said like, I think if the standard I set was like, if you intentionally or with like blatant disregard are spreading misinformation online, you should just be like given a warning a few times and then banned if you don't stop. But obviously, like people have different standards by which they measure misinformation. Like half the country thinks the fucking election was stolen, so I don't even know how you would go about enforcing that.
Okay. And then our next question comes from Mentally Ill Loner, and they want to know, You mentioned in the earlier streams that the problem with most right-wingers is not their IQ level, but the information they are subjected to. Any ideas on how to bridge the gap between reality and fantasy?
No, I mean that's kind of piggybacks off the last question. I don't know. I wish I had a good answer. Like, oh, if we just do this thing, like people won't be so delusional anymore. But I don't have a good answer for it. I wish I did, because if I did, I would talk about it and I'd push it all the time. I don't know how you stop people from being attracted towards like the more extreme viewpoints online that tend to be like highly uninformed.
All right. Randomizer wants to know, Biden has already seemed to be focused on expanding troops into Iraq and Syria. Do you think he has a plan to stop these wars or just keep the status quo?
I don't actually know in terms of, has he actually done that?
I'm not completely sure. I'm just reading from the question.
I don't know anything he's done about foreign policy at the moment. In reading what he's written about foreign policy, I seemed to align more with what he was saying versus I don't know what the fuck Trump was saying. But like if we're deploying more troops to Syria, for instance, to protect like our allies, like I think in Syria they're the YPG, those Kurdish people. Like if that's the case, then I mean I'm probably okay with that. But yeah, I mean, I think in general, it's probably time for us to be done in that region, you know, respecting our allies and making sure that we're pulling out in a responsible way.
All right. Our next question comes from Rel, and they want to know, what are your thoughts on affirmative action? Regulations to force diversity and race-based hiring quotas that many companies are adopting.
I think that there are ways that affirmative action can be used in positive ways. I think there are ways it can be used in negative ways. I think that like a negative way to do affirmative action is like, we're going to hire 30% of our workforce so that they're Black. I think that's kind of stupid. But like, I think there could be positive ways to do affirmative action. For instance, like we have a grant or something, you know, to have like a, you know, like a certain type of, like a certain job is opened up, and in this job, you know, we're going to hire people because we're using money that I'm thinking more education actually. Like for a school, you might get a grant, you know, for studies for like a certain people that you otherwise wouldn't normally have in the school because you wouldn't be able to afford it. But like special programs are made just for these types of people or something. Like in those cases, I think I'm generally okay with it. I feel like affirmative action should probably fall more like on the state or education side rather than forcing companies to do things. Because that feels a little bit kind of weird sometimes. Like I think in California, they just passed something recently where somebody on your board like has to be a woman. It's like a requirement. I don't know. That just seems like it leads to a whole bunch of weird negative external things, but yeah.
Okay. Santino wants to know, what is the top policy you hope the Biden administration / Democrats will pass?
There's two parts to this. Is it like in terms of like politically effective and good for like polling numbers, or like stuff that would actually help the country? I think that we're well due past like time for having some sort of like healthcare system. I think that's really, really important. I think the United States is like way far behind on that. In terms of policies that would be like electorally popular, I think that something along the lines of like the 15 an hour minimum wage. I'm not really sure how good that would be for the economy, but that would probably be very electorally popular for Democrats and would probably ensure that they get like a lot of support from the public if they were to do that. But some type of like national healthcare system, I think, is crucial at this point.
All right. Electron wants to know, crisps, chips, or fries?
French fries for sure.
Joseph McGee wants to know, do you think more extreme political opinions are more attributed to social media bubbles or inequality?
I mean, probably a little bit of both, right? Like the thing that sucks about like extremism is it's never just one thing. Like it's never just like, oh, if we just do this one thing, like now the extremism is gone. Like it's gonna be a ton of different things that all come together, you know. Anytime you've got like high periods of inequality or political instability or problems with people, you know, like eating or whatever, it's probably going to breed, you know, forms of extremism. And anytime you've got people that all kind of withdraw into their own little bubbles, it's going to probably breed forms of extremism. So I mean, I'm sure all of this plays a role into making people more extreme.
All right. Our next question comes from Lil Bill. They want to know, what are your general thoughts on Biden's executive orders?
I didn't see the second days. The first days seemed fine, although at this point I don't even remember them. Fuck. There were 4 big ones that they talked about in the first day, and I remember briefly going over them. And I don't think I had any problems with them. I'd have to look them up again, though. I don't even remember at this point.
All right. Our next question comes from Roritan, and they want to know if a legislator has a conflict of interest between their constituents and the wider country, which do you prefer they serve and why?
Wait, I'm sorry. Hold on. Say that one more time.
If a legislator has conflicts of interest between, sorry, I'm just finding the question again.
No, you're fine. Sorry, I was reading the
second.
chat. I fucked myself.
It's all right. Oh, sorry. If a legislator has a conflict of interest between their constituents and the wider country, which do you prefer they serve and why?
I think a politician's goal should always be to get reelected. So you should probably be serving your constituents and not the wider country. That would be that's how it probably should run. And I think that's probably what they would do. And I don't necessarily have a problem with that.
All right. Our next question comes from Josh L, and they want to know what nation, if any, do you think utilizes capitalist economics more effectively than America?
Fuck, was it? Were people saying that like Sweden was supposed to be like a really, really good place to start a business, or Norway? I know it was one of those like, I know it was one of the left-leaning Scandinavian countries because people are like, oh, it must be bad to start a business there. Maybe it was even Denmark. So I mean, like these places that have like high levels of capital investment, that have businesses that start all the time, but still manage to take care of their poor people. I mean, it seems like they're probably applying capitalist principles a little bit better than the U.S. does. People in my chat are saying it was Denmark, so maybe Denmark.
Okay. Our next question comes from Yeetikus. They want to know, what do you think of Kanzuk?
I don't know what Kanzuk.
Yeah, it's a trading deal, I believe, between Canada, New Zealand, and the UK.
I mean, I like trading deals, so sounds based. I guess I don't know anything about it. Is it like a kind of like a mini NAFTA or something, or are there just some?
I'm not completely sure on the details, to be honest. I'm just reading the question.
Okay.
We'll just move on to the next one then.
Gotcha.
Our next question comes from Blip. They ask, do you think that billionaires will leave the country if they feel like they are taxed too much?
Wait, hold on, wait. Who asked that last question?
The Kanzuk one.
Yeah.
That was from Yeetikus.
Okay. I didn't get memed. It's not like can Zuck suck my dick or some shit, right? It's not like a
No, it's a real thing.
Okay, sorry. Okay, just making sure.
I'll repeat that question just then. Blip wants to know, do you think that billionaires will leave the country if they feel like they are taxed too much?
It's possible, although I don't know where they would go. Yeah, I mean, you're not probably going to most European countries, right? I think there are enough like international tax havens at this point that you don't really have to leave the U.S. to shelter your income from taxes. So I don't really see that happening. But I mean, if the taxes became too high at some point, if it was preferential to be offshore with that money, then I imagine people would probably do it. It seems to make sense, right? But I mean, like that's a complicated equation of you have to weigh like, you know, what are the benefits I get from staying here versus if I take my money somewhere else? Like, even if I'm being taxed less, can I still get the same return on it? Like, yeah, I'm sure that's some equation that like really wealthy people have kind of figured out, like how high do the taxes have to go for me to go somewhere else, you know?
All right. Our next question comes from Etelex, and they want to know, what do you think is a good definition of fascism?
My understanding of fascism is that like fascism is like it has like a few parts to it. One typically involves some form of like ultra nationalism, that you like fucking love your country, to the point that it's often racialized. It's not just that you love your country, you love the people living in your country, and you love like a certain race of people living in your country. So my understanding is that fascism usually has like an ultra nationalistic / racialized aspect to it. And then it also has a degree of authoritarianism as well that has like a populist bent. So you have some sort of leader that's like, hey, listen, the world is fucked. Everybody's out to get you. I'm the only one that can help you. So you need to entrust me with all of your power. Okay. Fuck political parties. Like fuck the process. Like I'm going to do what I need to do to keep you guys safe and protect you from the evil outsiders. So like my understanding of fascism is that it has some form of like ultra nationalism involved, and then some form of like authoritarianism is involved. But in today's common parlance, fascism is usually just somebody you don't like. So yeah, but that's my understanding of like what fascism technically refers to. But I'm sure there's also like 50 billion different definitions, like there is for socialism and communism and social democrat and neoliberal and.
Okay. And because there kind of seems to be a lot of discourse about this, especially on the left, would you say the Trump administration was a fascist administration, or would you say it had like fascistic tendencies or anything else?
Somehow, by the grace of God, maybe we're his chosen fucking people. I think that I think that America resisted the fascism, or at least our system did, surprisingly enough. So I wouldn't say it was a fascist administration, but they definitely wanted to be. Trump would definitely, I think, fashions himself to be quite the fascist, whether he knows that or not. And I think a lot of the Republicans that supported Trump, whether they know it or not, probably would support a fascist. Like, I think for a lot of Republicans, I think that if I could sit across a Republican to describe like a style of leadership that was fascist, but I didn't call it fascist, I think they would agree with it. Yeah.
Okay. Our next question comes from Lumax, and they want to know, on the abortion debate, what is your view on the fetus will grow into a child and therefore should be preserved argument?
I don't think that we generally take into account like future life that isn't life yet, because I think you run into like a lot of weird like philosophical conundrums if you do that, and also it just doesn't make sense to treat something like as it could in the future be. I think that doesn't seem to make very much sense. I don't really buy that argument. Yeah, I don't see a reason why should you value something that doesn't quite exist yet.
Okay. Our next question comes from Sushi, and they want to know, do you agree with Biden's plan to increase the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour?
From an optics point, absolutely. I think it makes the Democratic Party look really good. I think there's a lot of people in the U.S. that would see like a direct benefit from that, so they'd have more favorable views of it, which would subsequently increase the chances of another Democrat getting elected. From an econ policy, 15 an hour just sounds way too high. It's just way too high across the entire country. I think there are certain sectors or certain parts of the country that could probably support 15 an hour, but like to pretend that the same minimum. The problem that I have with minimum wage is people make two hugely faulty assumptions about it. One is they assume every worker has the same wage requirements, and two, people assume that every every state in the country can support the same minimum wage. And both of these assumptions are just absolutely absurd. Is somebody earning I don't even know what the minimum wage is these days. Fuck, it's been a long time since I've worked. Is somebody earning like $9 an hour at McDonald's? Is that bad? Well, if it's a college kid that's working part-time, not necessarily. If it's a single mother trying to support a family of three, that's a huge problem, right? But like minimum wage doesn't really address this. We could raise it up to a level to where, like the single parent families are being taken care of. But now every single person that goes to work those jobs, it's not that, is never getting hired because it's not worth it to hire them. Or these jobs just go away completely because they're automated. And then the second part is that like to pretend that like the same wage requirement would exist in like the Midwest as it does like on the coast is just ridiculous. In Nebraska, I can find like an okay like 2-bedroom apartment for like $900 to $1,000 a month, and in LA like my single apartment is like $2,500 a month. The idea that there would be like a similar wage requirement for either of these places is just unbelievably stupid to me. So yeah, in general, I'm not a big fan of federal. I mean, we can set like a federal floor for like what's the lowest thing in anywhere in the country, but I think that should be like a state thing where like states decide like what wages, or cities even, what wages need to be paid on a minimum level, or more ideally, something that's addressed with tax policy. I love taxes. I think taxes are like your fucking surgical tools to target people and then allocate funds to them appropriately. So things like the earned income credit are immensely good, as opposed to just trying to blanket raise wages, in my opinion.
All right. Our next question comes from Rika, and they want to know, do you think you're going to change your content more in the future now that you're going into more in real life politics, as in be more friendly to a real life political audience for image?
Maybe, I don't know. I have a really hard time being like fake friendly to people. A lot of people just piss me off, and they probably always will. So there are times where like I try to commit to like, okay, this year I'm going to be nice to everybody, but then I'll inevitably end up in some discussion with somebody that just absolutely fucking pisses me off, and then fuck all that. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Okay. And kind of staying on that topic, what was the most important lesson you learned from canvassing in Georgia, broadly speaking?
What was the most political lesson?
Important lesson.
Important lesson. All of the lessons that I learned related to that were just kind of like business related. So I don't know if like but like organizational skills, I guess vetting employees better before you hire them, how to communicate with potential customers slash employees slash volunteers. All the lessons that I took from that were kind of like business related. I mean, if anybody wants, we can do like small business management later, I guess, if somebody, if somebody wants to know more about that, but it was all related to that kind of shit. Yeah.
All right. Our next question comes from Cringe, and they ask, would you consider yourself a neoliberal? If not, what separates you from that ideology?
I hate political labels. As soon as somebody gives themselves a political label, I think they spend more time arguing what they aren't rather than what they are. People on the left tend to call me a neoliberal, and they tend to use it in a very derogatory manner because they have very one-dimensional and stupid views on foreign policy. And then people on the right tend to call me a soc dem. And I don't know how they use. Actually, they usually just call me a socialist. So I don't know. Like all the online like communities have destroyed all political labels. It's impossible to know what anybody is when they identify themselves as something. Like if somebody calls themselves a neoliberal online, they could either mean that they are somebody that like supports like tax policies and is a capitalist, but like largely supports like redistribution of wealth and all sorts of stuff like that, or they could be like a fucking war hawk, insane, like laissez-faire market person. So I don't know.
All right. Our next question comes from Southwest, and they want to know, has the Industrial Revolution and its consequences been a disaster for the human race?
I mean, there's a multitude of things you could go into there. I think that there's two huge things that we can go into. One, actually, both of these are pretty intangible, but the one I would say would be climate change. Industrialization and the massive amounts of CO2 that we spew now are probably leading us on a path towards bad climate stuff if we haven't already started to experience the effects of that with kind of like the different weather patterns and everything we've experienced, although people always argue about how much of that is attributable to climate change. So that's a big one, is climate change. The second thing, I don't know if I would blame this on industrialization or capitalism or consumerism or what, but it seems like we're getting farther and farther removed from how we kind of used to originally live as like hunter-gatherers. And it feels like our huge bend towards like consumerism and the need to like buy products and, acquire goods and shit in order to feel better about ourselves and to give us meaning and purpose in life seems to make a lot of people really fucking miserable, which I think is kind of sad. Now, how much of this is like attributable to like industrialization? I'm not sure. That's hard to say, but yeah.
All right. Our next question comes from Furret. They want to know, do you believe welfare should be abolished in favor of private charity?
I mean, no. And in a world where private charity was done like in an entirely equitable manner, where everybody cared about all other people and we had better ways of making sure that people got what they needed, then I guess I'd be okay. But I mean, we're probably pretty far removed from that world, so I don't think I'd be okay with that.
Okay, and our next question comes from the same user, Furret, and they also want to know, is exploitation of the worker an outdated concept from the 1800s, or is it still relevant today?
If people are saying exploitation of the worker as though like the idea that like all labor is or all profits earned from any capital owner is exploitation because they're scraping the excess from the labor, that concept is just unbelievably fucking stupid. But in terms of like, can laborers be exploited in a more general sense, like outside of like the labor value theory, then yeah, of course. And that's something that probably is important to take note of and pay attention to.
Okay. Our next question comes from Suka Red, and they want to know, liberal is becoming more of an insult every day. How do you push back against this?
I don't know. It's annoying as fuck. Now when people call me a liberal as an insult, I don't know if it's some dipshit fucking lefty or if it's some fucking like alt-righter. I have no idea anymore. It's annoying. I think that one thing that if you want to take solace in anything, it's that, so like right now that the phase that we're already in actually is kind of like it's sexy and popular to be like a socialist / communist online. Like this is like the new aesthetic, is a bunch of like insanely fucking wealthy people that are so rich they have to hide their incomes from you on Patreon in order to pretend that they're like you while they masquerade as fucking socialists or whatever. If there's any consolation, my guess is going to be that these people will last like less time than the centrists / like skeptics, because these guys eat each other alive like fucking crazy. So whether they all end their careers on like sexually accusationing themselves, or whether they all argue over who's more left or pure enough or blah blah blah. Like I feel like they're not going to last as long as the other side, because the amount of like purity testing is like fucking unbelievable. It's funny watching like both ends of the political spectrum have like fucking ran off the tracks in the United States, to where you've got like people on the left like Jimmy Dore or Kyle Kalinske. These people on at least online are like shitting all over like fucking AOC and Bernie for not being left enough. And then you've got like all of the ex-Trump fans that were like even started to attack Trump because Trump like wasn't right enough, because Trump didn't defend them during the inauguration, when or not the inauguration, during the Capitol protests, that Trump didn't like pardon any of them. So I mean, like both ends of the political spectrum have ran like super fucking hard off the tracks. It'll be interesting to see who like comes back first, because I guess those people will have the most power as they reunite with their other political bodies that they separated from. But yeah, damn.
All right. And on that, you said about being about rich socialists online. Do you
Wait, hold on. Can I say something real quickly? Hold on.
Yeah.
Sorry, hold on. I have to do this real quick, because I see every time I bring this topic up, there's always some dumb fuck that thinks he's super clever by posting that same comic saying, "Oh, curious, you participate in a society, you live in it, blah blah blah," and they think that they're making like a really good point. So the reason why you would say that, like, oh well, if you're a socialist, like that doesn't necessarily mean you have to live by your ideals, is because when people say that, they're talking about like fucking like bricklayers that are making like $15,000 a year. Those are the people that can't afford to live by socialist ideals, because they're not only like a part of the system, they are literally enslaved to the system and are being actively destroyed by the system. It's so funny because Republicans have all these poor, stupid, white redneck fucks around here like defending these like racist ideas to defend like capitalist owners and shit, and they're tools. Like poor white people are tools of wealthy Republicans. However, you poor dumb fuck people on the left are just as much tools by the rich fucking socialists online that do nothing with their money to live any of their ideals as well. Like you've got these people online now on the left, like people like Sean and Jen that make 2 videos a year that are collecting over 10,000 quid a month on their fucking Patreon for doing no fucking work, or these other big left-leaning content creators that are making well over 7 figures a year that do nothing with their money to help their cause, right? And what's their excuse? Like, oh, well, I live in a society. Like, dude, motherfucker, you don't live in a society. You thrive in the society, okay? You are at the top. Okay, you're on the upper echelon. You are the 1% earner. Okay, you cannot use the excuse, well, I live in a society, so of course I'm a slave to it. No, motherfucker, you have so much money. Do something with it. If you truly, really believe these ideas, if these are really something that you feel so strong about that you fucking turn your stream on every day to talk to it, if you expect to mobilize your audience in believing about it, but you're not going to do anything yourself, what the fuck is wrong with you? No, fuck that shit. You can't use that like, oh, well, just because I'm a socialist doesn't mean I can't have money. Sure, but you better fucking do something with it, because if you just sit there and invest it or sit in and do fuck all with it, what's the difference between you and a fucking capitalist? Like, congratulations, you've got a YouTube channel, you scream at other people to act like socialists when you can't even do it when you have the financial means available for you to do so? Fuck that shit. Put your money where your mouth is, or shut the fuck up. Or at least acknowledge that most of the people that you follow that call themselves lefties or socialists are worthless fucking grifters, that when the revolution comes, they're going to be sitting behind their fucking white suburban like gates to their neighborhoods just like all of their fucking conservative friends would, all right? That's all I'm saying. Sorry, what's the next question?
Our next question is from Rel, and they ask, should a private company have the authority to exclude certain races, sexes, or other groups from entering a store?
I think the concept of protected classes is very important. A lot of people like to use the like, well, the free market will sort itself out. But I mean, if that was true, then slavery and racism and redlining would have never been a thing ever. Like we would have, because the free market would have always sorted itself out. I don't buy that idea that that you couldn't have like a racist city or town that just never ever has black people or certain races or creeds of people ever going into their stores. Like I think that kind of thing would happen. So I think that the concept of protected classes is good, and I think I support the concept of protected classes. And I would want to see those abolished. Yeah.
Okay. And moving on from that, Z wants to know, is Snowden a traitor or a hero in your eyes?
Hold on one second. Is Snowden a traitor or a hero?
Yeah, that's the question.
Man, I don't know. I go back and forth with this one so much. Honest to God, if I were to have like a really good opinion on this, I would need to do like a deep dive into how Snowden leaked shit. Like my initial understanding is that like when Snowden started leaking stuff, he did it in a fairly responsible, like highly redacted manner so that names and shit were being released. Like the opposite of say like Chelsea Manning. But then I've heard people contradict this take that like, okay, well, he got a bunch of state secrets and immediately ran to Russia. But then I've heard people counter, well, if he didn't go to Russia, the US would have found him somewhere else and killed him. I don't know, man. I'm 50-50 on Snowden. I hate Assange. I hate Chelsea Manning, but on Snowden, I'm like 50-50 still. I could easily be pushed either way. I just haven't spent a lot of time like digging into it.
All right. Our next question comes from hashtag. They want to know, do you think the sanctions on Russia have been beneficial or damaging to political relations, and what should be done about them in the future?
Man, having a less adversarial position towards Russia would be cool, but I don't know enough about what goes on behind the scenes to know if that's possible or not. I like the idea of, I think right now I'm a fan of like the idea of attacking Russia via like making friends in proxy ways, like doing diplomacy instead of proxy wars is something I'm a fan of. So for instance, like Biden, I think Iran agreed to rejoin that joint comprehensive plan of action, the Iranian nuclear deal. So like stuff like that, I'm a huge fan of making friends with people around the world like that to undermine kind of Russian influence. But I don't know if Russia or the United States right now has an interest in working together because both see themselves as like trying to lead like the world, I guess, with the U.S. currently being on top. That's my understanding, but I'm sure that's a really complicated question that goes like to the heart of like the initiatives that both countries have in terms of like foreign policy.
All right. Our next question comes from Sushi, and they want to know, what do you feel about Biden's foreign policy, broadly speaking?
There was a huge op-ed that we read. Was it on the Wall Street Journal? Somebody might link it in chat. There's a huge op-ed we read a while ago, and I really liked most of his foreign policy takes. He seemed to have a much more measured response to things in terms of like being intelligent about how to approach relationships with other countries rather than just war or sanctions. It seemed like the truly the most reddest pill take on like foreign policy is the way to be strong is to just have lots of friends and to have like very high relations with like most other countries in the world. I think that kind of stuff is important, and I like that idea in concept. Now, in terms of in practice, I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Like I've heard the U.S. is supposedly like recognizing Guaido as the leader of Venezuela as opposed to Maduro. I don't know how I feel about that. I mentioned that I was a little bit not sure about this, and I see people argue in my chat about whether or not like the Venezuelan elections were good or bad. I just haven't done enough digging into that, but I guess we'll kind of see. I mean, people talk a lot when it comes to foreign policy. It's hard to see what actually happens. Like didn't Obama say he wanted to shut down Guantanamo Bay for like 8 years and it never happened for reasons? So yeah, I don't know. Well, I guess we'll just have to see how he acts. Yeah.
All right. And bringing it kind of closer back to home, Blip wants to know, if you lived in New York City, would you vote for Andrew Yang for mayor?
I'd have to see who else is running. I'm generally not a fan of people that are single issue people. So like Yang and his like, I don't want to say fervent obsession with like UBI is not something that necessarily gets me super excited. I'm not like a huge like UBI fan. It's possible that Yang's other policies might be good, but I think they need tunnel vision is really hard on like automation and the threat of automation. Like I think people have been scared about capital becoming too productive since like the 1800s. Like pretty sure in Capital, even Marx talks about like the threat of like the sewing looms or whatever, like getting rid of all jobs and being in a post-scarce society where there's no labor available. And it seems like that hasn't happened yet. So,
okay. And kind of on that, Lil Bill wants to know: will Yang be a good mayor? Do you think?
I have no idea. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay. Our next question comes from Z. They want to know: should Bernie be criticized for voting against the Patriot Act in 2001?
Should Bernie be criticized for voting against the Patriot Act? I guess it depends on how you feel about the expansion of state surveillance. I think that generally, I'm not usually a fan of giving our three-letter agencies like unlimited access to all of our lives and authority and everything. But I guess it depends on where you fall, like how liberal you are or whatever. Yeah.
Okay. Just for the people in Twitch chat, if you want to come ask questions, we're at discord.gg/bluepolitics if you're enjoying the content so far. But that being said, we'll move into the next question. Next question comes from Furret, and they want to know: do you support a trade embargo on China?
I don't really think trade embargoes do much for us. I just don't think it's a good way to move forward. It hurts our economy for what? If you really want to take like a based approach to trade, you need to like engage more in multilateral trade agreements. Like that's like the That's like the way forward. This obsession thinking that we can like just trade war everybody and win that way, I think is just really immature and really stupid.
Okay. Our next question comes from Rido. They want to know, do you have any aspirations to be able to campaign in a broader political context than the extremely online internet culture you're contained in?
Like helping other people campaign, yes. Running for office myself, fuck no. But yeah, I mean, like right now, the current political project I have is we have like picked like a candidate that we really like for mayor in my home city of Omaha, Nebraska, and now I'm like kind of like focused all of my efforts on trying to get this guy elected. Is like my current goal. And if I'm able to do that, that would be really, it'd be like the biggest thing I've accomplished in my entire career. So that's my current project. And then if that works, then I don't know, we'll see from there. But I myself, I don't think I would ever run for office. I like streaming too much. There's not enough money in being a public figure. Like fuck all that shit. Yeah.
All right. Our next question comes from Z. They want to know, should all people be given a UBI to put them above the poverty line?
Should enough people be given UBI to put above? I don't know. I'm super interested in seeing like the empirical data on UBI, but I just haven't yet. It's obviously it's really hard to study something that no countries are willing to implement. There have been some smaller scale experiments with it where it seemed like it's been pretty positive. But yeah, I don't know. That's a lot of money. So I don't know like where we're getting that back at, if taxes are going up or if or federal government has some way of like recollecting, recapturing all of that or what. But.
Okay. Our next question comes from Electron. They want to know, what ideology do you think will be most dominant in 100 years' time?
I don't know what technology will be here in 100 years' time. We might all be fucking alien food by then. I have no idea.
Okay.
I hope that the next thing, because we've done a lot of shit with computers. We've done a lot of shit with spaceships. I hope that the next thing that we're able to do is like really explore biology related stuff. I hope that with like that, I hope there's like a huge like resurgence or uptick in that. That would be really cool because there's like a whole bunch of shit. Like we still don't know very much about like almost anything related to human biology. Like all of it is so complicated and like interconnected that all of it is like still like kind of mysterious to us, especially like neurochemistry stuff, like brain related stuff. I hope that we like make big strides in that. And there's still like so many diseases that we haven't figured out either, right? Like exponentially like increasing our computer processing capabilities has been unbelievable. Like cell phones and shit are crazy, but people still die of like prostate cancer and stuff. I think it would be really, really cool if there was like a huge push or if we started to make huge strides in our understanding of biology. Not to take away from what we have done, because I know that we have made strides there, but bigger strides. Yeah.
Would you consider yourself a transhumanist?
Is transhumanist the people that think you can put your mind into machines or whatever?
I guess you could probably put it like that, yeah.
No, I saw that cult on Cowboy Bebop. I'm not falling into that trap. Realistically, I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion on it. Okay. If we could do it, I guess it sounds interesting, but
okay. Our next question comes from Furret. Should there be no minimum wage?
If there was no minimum wage, then that change would have to come alongside a radical revamping of our tax policy. So like, I'm not like ideologically married to the idea of the minimum wage, but you can't just get rid of it and not change some other part of the system. Like some other part of the system would have to be pretty dramatically changed, because it seems like we've increased the minimum wage time and time again, and we haven't suffered any of the like deleterious effects that a lot of people seem to argue about. Even in Seattle, where they had a big bump, like people are still going back and forth, publishing study and study and response over whether or not that actually harmed workers or not. So yeah, I don't know. If we got rid of the minimum wage, like I'm not like super married to the idea, but that would have to come with like a radical revamping of our tax system to like target people that need money and distribute it to them somehow.
All right. Our next question comes from Mr. J. Mooples. They want to know, is it reasonable for a person to give up on being politically informed?
Yeah, I can totally understand why people would. There's so much shit to sort through. I can understand the frustration. Yeah. The saddest thing is that like as companies grow and money is made and all of us become more kind of like unified as a people, I think that we are more tuned into like national and international issues, but the things that really matter when it comes to making big differences around the country are local issues, and nobody cares about those anymore. Like nobody really pays attention to them or gives them any time. And so, yeah, if you were going to be informed on anything, the best thing to be informed on would probably be like your local issues, but nobody really cares about those. unfortunately. So yeah, if you're going to spend any time like getting informed of something, make it like whatever's going on locally.
All right. Our next question comes from Adlem, and they want to know: do you think that China will face any meaningful repercussions for their situation with the Uyghurs?
No. Not unless the rest of the world gets its act together and stops acting so fucking scared and hiding from each other.
Okay. Our next question comes from Z. They want to know: should there be a 99% tax rate after 1 billion in income?
I don't think anybody makes 1 billion in income. I'm gonna assume that they're talking about like capital gains as well. I'm just not really the idea of like deleting billionaires from society is just not high on my priority list. I think that when people do that, I think that you have a really toxic view of how politics or fiscal policy should work. More specifically, like when you think of like fiscal policy, it should be here are the programs I want to fund, and then this is how much money I need to raise to fund them. The obsession of like we need to get rid of billionaires and no one should make this much money. Like who cares who makes so much money? What should matter is here's a program we need to fund. We need to raise this much revenue to fund it. And then if that ends up making it so that there are no more billionaires, then okay, that's fine. But the idea of like eliminating billionaires for the sake of eliminating billionaires is really silly, in my opinion.
Okay. Our next question comes from Timeless. They want to know: what is your opinion on socialists and far left people being the only people that have caused beneficial change in society, such as the weekend and lower working hours?
I wanted to do like a big dive into this on stream. I don't think that's true. A lot of these changes came as a result of like a lot of different people. Like I think that the weekend thing, I think that there was a group, it wasn't basket weavers. It was like a relatively small union that pushed for that as part of the negotiations for their job. And then I think Henry Ford decided to give his workers weekends off. Like this has been like an effort from lots of society. This is like a really common meme, but people always want to co-opt history where it's like, oh, well, the only good things that have ever happened in all of fucking labor history have come from fucking Marxists and socialists. Like, I don't think that's true. I think that's a little bit of a simplification of everything that happened. That being said, like, I think that there are positive things that left-leaning people push for. And I think that like strengthening unions and whatnot are really important things that we could look at in the United States.
All right. Our next question comes from...
Real quick, a lot of these same things that did immensely positive things in the United States also did immensely negative things as well. Unions and how strong unions were in U.S. history have given us a lot of great things related to labor. They were also incredibly fucking racist. And labor unions would oftentimes use their labor union power to enact racism against minorities. Even though lefties say unions would fix like fucking racism and blah, 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 a lot of unions like explicitly instilled hierarchies and shit in order to continue to enact racism against other members in the union. For instance, in the 60s and 70s, when unions started to become more integrated, one of the ways that labor unions would fuck over minorities is they say, okay, cool, well, everybody can work any job and everybody can be equal and that's fine. However, we're going to reserve higher jobs for people that have worked lower jobs, like in higher positions for longer periods of time, like exclusively basically ensuring that only white people would be getting into those higher positions, right? It took the power of the federal government stepping in to end a lot of the racism that was being enforced on the union level. Just to be clear, like unions have been awesome in a lot of parts of the United States, but unions have also done really shitty things too. Unions are not the answer to everything, and unions on their own or lefty policies on their own will not fix every problem that we have in society, despite how much a lot of online lefties like to try to convince you otherwise.
Okay, and before we move on, we've been going for about an hour now. Are you still good to take more questions?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, excellent. Our next question comes from Mentally Ill Loner, and they want to know: what is a good indicator that someone has lived a fulfilling life?
I think how happy you are at the end of it. I think that happiness is something that a lot of us aren't really taught to like go after. I think that we're kind of given the answers to life, and we don't realize that you kind of have to figure a lot of that out on your own. I think that's why a lot of people hit like these, especially millennials now are hitting this burnout in their 30s. Actually, a lot of people hit it way earlier, where they're working certain jobs because they were told that once they graduate high school, they need to go to college. And once they graduate college, they need to get certain jobs. And they realize like, oh shit, like, this doesn't make me very happy. Like the different types of lives that people live are like very interesting to me. Like my ex-wife has always worked like kind of shitty service jobs. And that's it. but she's like lived all over the country because she just packs her stuff up, she moves, and she goes like on an international trip once per year. And she does this with the money that she saves, like working in service. Like that's it. She like makes tips, she saves the money, and like once a year she goes to like Thailand or some shit. But then I'll know other people that are earning like low six figures and everything that seem like oh my god, like this person is way more fucking successful. But they're like fucking miserable. They hate their lives, they hate their jobs, they hate where they live, they hate the lack of mobility, they can't move anywhere, they hate that they don't have any time off. So yeah, I think that people make really big mistakes in terms of judging, you know, like how happy people are in life. I think that, but we also enforce that on ourselves. On like a really super unrelated note, like I was reading through a lot of threads on like a certain subreddit yesterday that they like to shit on my fiance a lot, and one thing that I read a lot is like people will talk about like, oh, like how good is this person doing in life? Well, this person seems like a dumb fuck. Like this person doesn't have like a college degree. Like this person, blah, 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 blah. But when people stop to think about how good somebody's doing in life, they never stop and ask the question like, is this person happy? Because then they'll compare these people to other people who like do have college degrees or people that are doing really well financially or whatever. But like they seem to have like a lot more problems related to stress or related to their like mental well-being or related to their happiness or anxiety. And it's like, damn, like people's ideas, the way that we judge success, I think in society, at least in the Western world today, is really fucking toxic, which is something I think more people should pay attention to.
Okay. Our next question comes from Yo Mama, and they want to know, do you think that ignorance is bliss?
Yeah, I think it can be, of course.
Okay.
Not something that this is my takeaway from a very big mushroom trip. Something that I learned is I think that knowledge is never good in and of itself. I think we assume that, but knowledge is only good insofar as you can use it and apply it to make your life better. There are a whole bunch of things you can learn that will make you unhappy that don't benefit you at all. And the idea that knowledge is in and of itself like very good to have without like any like real life application is a very immature and very silly idea. And I say that having believed that up until I was around 30 years old. So I don't mean like only young dipshits, but like I thought this until I was 30. Unironically, they're like, oh, well, just knowledge in and of itself is positive. Like the more knowledge, the better. But I don't think that's true. I think that learning things insofar as you can apply them to your life to increase your happiness, that's like the value of knowledge. So like when people say ignorance is bliss, like, you know, you could be informed of every fucking issue and like black pilled and red pilled and blue pilled on every fucking political issue. But if all that does is make you miserable all day or just makes you fight with people all day on Twitter, and at the end of the day, you're not really getting anything done or accomplishing anything, like, well, what the fuck have you gained? What the fuck is the point of that knowledge? Like, you'd be better off just like reading about Harry Potter fan fiction if that makes you happier, you know? Like you might look down on other people. And it's funny, like some of the only ways, be like, I think that people don't realize this, but like sometimes knowledge is so worthless. The only way we can make that knowledge worth something is to make fun of other people for not having it. And it's like, okay, well, like, good job. Like, you know about like shit going on, you know, in this part of the world or blah, blah, blah. Like, well, what do you gain from it? It's like, well, what do you know about it? It's like, well, I don't know anything, but I'm not any worse off for it. Like, I don't give a fuck. Now, I say this as somebody that argues online politics all day, but I mean, I don't let it make me miserable.
All right. Our next question comes from DK. They want to know, why do you think leftists fail so much on economics?
Why do leftists what?
Fail so much on economics.
Oh, well, the problem is that like Marx, like the book Capital is like a giant critique of capitalism. And so Marxism kind of like spawns off this like idea of like critiquing capitalism. But a lot of modern day lefties don't understand the critiques of capitalism or capitalism itself. So I don't know. I don't know what the average lefty thinks when they like so confidently will like get up and start talking like economic policy. And it's like very fucking obvious that they have absolutely no fucking idea what the fuck they're talking about insofar as anything goes. I don't know where that brazen like that attitude comes from. I don't know. When I get online, I get really scared sometimes. I'm going to say a lot of dumb shit that's not going to make sense or whatever. Like this is something I'm very worried about a lot. And I do it all the time. I give takes that are like, oh fuck, I was totally fucking wrong on this, or this is something I totally missed this, or I misrepresented this, or like I fucked this up. But like a lot of lefties will very confidently come out and like argue. They don't even understand like they're like, here's something. Over half of all lefty content creators, I'm confident of this, and I'm not saying fans, I'm saying the actual people you watch cannot explain to you like the labor value theory. They wouldn't be able to do it. And if they can stumble through like some haphazard explanation of what LVT is, they're not going to comprehend it. And if they're able to trick you into thinking, if you ask them a basic question like, oh, well, like, what do you think about like the transformation problem? They'll just give you like a dead stare because they have absolutely no fucking idea what you're thinking about. So like, how could you possibly? And then like, if you ask them like basic things about like neoclassical economics, or if you ask them basic things about like our current understanding of how economics works, they can't answer any of those questions as well. Like, how are you critiquing a system when you don't understand the system or any of the critiques itself, or any of the critiques of the critiques? Like, people are just dumb as fuck. I don't know. But that's just true of like everybody on the left and right online politics. Like, I don't know. It's just fucking stupid.
Okay. And staying on that kind of topic, Good Faith Annie Piecap, I'm probably mispronouncing that, wants to know, I understand why you have problems with many impragmatic lefties, but what, if any, problems would you have with socialism in the sense of workers owning the means of production, considering that workers would be the ones who share the risks and responsibilities of the business, and that we have functioning co-ops?
I don't have any problems with co-ops. If co-ops work, I think that's awesome. And it seems like a good idea on its face, I think. My biggest question about like a socialist society is, so I guess here's my question. You can answer this, or maybe someone to check. Who decides who does what work in a socialist society? Like, let's say we get into an area where we don't have enough doctors, we don't have enough computer engineers, or we don't have anybody that wants to be janitors. Like, how do you decide who does what work? And be careful, because you can't say like profit incentive or we'll pay them more, because obviously, like, depending on how far left you go, like these don't exist. Like, so like this guy in chat, like I would love to hear this station, because they always like never have. So this guy in chat, Timeless, says the workers decide what they'll work. Well, what do you do when nobody decides they want to work at like the water treatment plant? Or what do you do when nobody decides they want to be security at like a nuclear power plant? Or what do you do when nobody wants to be like a fucking, like back-end data analyst? Like, what do you do when you run out of jobs, when you run out of people for those jobs? Like,
all right. Our next question comes from Blip. They want to know, do you support a Wall Street tax like the one that Bernie Sanders proposed?
my understanding is that right now, I think most economists think that FTTs, financial transaction taxes, are usually bad ways to do things. They like heavily discourage like market activity, and they're just all around. They're not effective at raising revenue because that type of activity decreases substantially once the tax is implemented.
Okay. Our next question is from probably Tim. They want to know, does it concern you that politics in America is increasingly hostile? Should we try to be less hostile, or is there good reason to be hostile in modern politics?
Yeah, I think it's really bad. Hopefully this changes over time. Like Biden has tried to do it, right? Like Biden is hard. If Biden can't do it, because Biden has taken like the most like hardcore like unity stance possible, right? With this like, okay, well, I'm the president of all Americans, not just Republicans and Democrats, and like we're gonna work together and blah blah blah. Like if that type of rhetoric, I guess, doesn't work, I don't know. Like it seems like he's trying really hard to do it, so we'll see if he's successful or not.
Okay. Our next question comes from Brave Soldier.
Wait. What is this? What is the answer to this? And market socialism. Oh, market socialism. Never mind. Market socialism is like, I like it. Okay. I hope Vosh isn't in my chat. I love market socialism because market socialists are like, okay, listen, I want to be a socialist, but I understand that markets are real and I can't actually make anything with socialism work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be in favor of capitalism where everybody is a co-op, and I'm going to call that market socialism. That seems to be my understanding of what market socialism is. Like when you have socialism and the means of production, or I'm sorry, like your mode of production still like heavily relies on like a profit incentive. Like I'm pretty sure that Marx himself described that as the workers like literally taking advantage of themselves. As long as like profit is the motive, it's still like necessarily evil or something. Although I guess maybe you don't believe that, but like, I don't know. Market socialism to me just sounds like capitalism with a whole bunch of co-ops, which I'm not really opposed to. If people want to do that, that's fine. But yeah. But co-ops themselves, I don't think are technically socialist. But okay, go.
That sounds kind of base to me. Our next question is from Brave Soldier, and they want to know, what advice would you give to someone trying to get a better grasp on politics?
Don't. I don't know. I don't know. You just have to like start reading a whole bunch of stupid shit, and I don't know. Read article. Here's one piece of advice. If you actually read through an entire article, like past the headline, you're going to be more informed than like 99% of people talking about it on the internet, and then more informed than like 85% of political commentators. Because most people that you listen to on YouTube, like Kyle Kulinski or these other types, don't actually read they don't even read the articles. They just give you like Twitter headlines and shit about the articles. So that's my piece of advice. Read the whole article and you'll be like surprisingly informed compared to other people.
All right. Our next question comes from Lumax. They want to know, what are your general opinions on democracy? Do you think it has failed because of the election of people like Trump, or is it salvageable through education?
I don't know, man. Democracy is only as good as its population, and we seem to be fucking up pretty hardcore right now. Ask me that in 20 years, and we'll see if you have to ask me that like on the internet, or if we're going to be talking in some fucking hut somewhere as everything burns the fuck down. We'll see.
Okay. Our next question comes from Baz. They want to know, what is your opinion on gene editing, and how should it be used? Exclusively for medical reasons, or should aesthetic uses be allowed as well? Sorry.
I would have to think long and hard about that. I'm not sure. I would have to think really hard about that because aesthetics would be a thing. It would have to because anything that becomes available for purchase becomes like fucking monetized and consumerized and shit. It's the common argument given in response would be that like, oh, well, aesthetically that'd be scary because you get like a fucking society that would all look the same. But I mean, we already kind of do that anyway with like our clothes and fashion. And we already also kind of do that as well with things like plastic surgery and stuff too. Like, so like if you're going to allow people to do like plastic surgery, shouldn't we allow people to just edit genes? Like, I don't know. I would have to think like really hard about that. That's a hard one.
All right. Our next question comes from B-Bus. They want to know, how do you feel about a fully automated communism?
If you could make it work, it would be base as fuck, I guess.
All right. Our next question is from TKR. They want to know, do you think that affirmative action should ensure representation in government jobs, civil services?
I mean, if you're going to have it anywhere, it seems like the government would be the place to start, right?
Okay. Our next question is from Doomdoll, and they want to know, how do you feel about the disappearances of billionaires in China?
Seems pretty weird, man. I'm typically, I don't like disappearing anybody, but that's just me, I guess, my crazy liberalism there.
Okay, and our next question comes from Santino. They want to know, what do you think about the Huawei ban? Do you think it was based on IT security concerns or Trump's anti-China rhetoric?
I mean, one and both. I think that there probably are legitimate concerns about China's ability to gather information about people in the United States. And then I'm sure that there is a lot of anti-Chinese rhetoric from Trump's side as well that played into that too. So yeah, I mean, it could be both there.
Okay. Another question comes from Spatial. They want to know, in another AMA you did, you mentioned that you believed ordinary people can enact change in the government and that corporations don't actually have total control as compared to what other leftists believe. What makes you think this?
This is an idea over the past year and a half that I've been like very like changed my mind like radically on. It seems to me that like we have this idea that government is like totally bought and paid for by corporations and shit. But like, there are a couple of like very basic questions I think that kind of challenge that assertion. The first one is like, what are all these radically crazy policies that corporations are pushing onto us that the entire population doesn't like? No one has an answer to that. Like it doesn't exist. And it's funny, like I notice that there are a lot of very common fictions that are spread on the internet that like don't like stand up to a few incredibly basic questions. So like this idea that corporations are writing policy, like the reality is that like corporations probably back politicians that are backing policies that like most of the population is already kind of on board with anyway. The idea that people have like all of these things that we want government to change, but government's just not doing it because of like evil corporations. I don't see that playing out anywhere, ever. There's that, and then there's the idea that like when you do find a mismatch of public opinion versus like actual policies enacted, sometimes or all the time actually, I think that difference can actually be explained more succinctly by looking at the actual voting population. So when we look at like police enforcement of like marijuana crimes, for instance, right? Well, the reason why like these aren't getting fixed and we'd expect them to is because generally like when it comes to local elections, which are the most important things to vote in, if it comes to police stuff, the people voting are usually like older, whiter, affluent like voters. And these people don't give a fuck much about like criminal justice because they're not getting arrested, right? An 80-year-old dude or a 70-year-old, like white, upper class voter isn't going to give a fuck about like 3 strike laws. This guy's not getting arrested, for smoking weed outside of his fucking high school. Yeah.
Okay. Our next question comes from Lil Bill. They want to know: is Subway bread actually cake?
Is Subway bread actually cake? No, that's too radical.
Okay. Our next question's from Jodeci. They want to know: who do you believe will be the left-wing candidate in the 2024 primaries, and do you think the Democratic Party will abandon left-wing policy like universal healthcare if there is not a Bernie-like figure forcing them to adopt the position?
Well, I mean, it didn't take a Bernie-like figure to get us, the not the AMA, the ACA. I think that we'll probably continue to move left on it as long as the electorate does. Yeah, I don't think you need like a Bernie to push those types of healthcare things. Also, I think
Okay.
that the idea of like single payer healthcare or any type of universal healthcare is popular enough now that we'll continue to see pushes for it. It's not like that's just going to go away.
All right. Our next question comes from One Life TX3, and they want to know: in your experience, what has been the best way to de-radicalize somebody from believing in the JQ?
I don't have experience de-radicalizing people away from the JQ, so I don't know. My forms of like quote unquote de-radicalization have usually just been like when I make certain Nazis look stupid online, their followers get uncomfortable and they start following me instead. That's like been my way of doing it. But like realistically, like if I had friends in real life that were like starting to fall under the JQ shit, I don't know what like the silver bullet is. Just as an aside, people seem to ask me these questions all the time, like, oh, like my mom believes this thing or my dad is pro this. Like, how do I like? I don't know. Like my parents are completely antithetical to my entire like political perspective. Like my parents are ride or die Trumples. Like both believe the election. So like I don't know. I don't have like this silver bullet to bring people over to your side on any of these issues.
Okay.
I wish I did, but yeah.
Our next question comes from Dio, and they want to know: how long do you think it would realistically take for the implementation of Medicare for all?
I mean, if I don't know, wasn't Bernie's plan over like 4 years or 2 years or something? It just depends on how long it's written out for. If they're just asking like once you have the policy enacted as law, how long would it take to implement it? I don't know. It just depends on how aggressive your plan is, right?
Right. Our next question is from Ethan Easy. They want to know: is happiness our highest value?
I would argue it is, yes.
Right. And then question from the same user. You don't have to answer this one if you don't want to. How happy are you on a scale of 1 to 10?
I'm a very happy person, and for whatever reason, I always have been. So I'd say like 9 or 10.
Nice. Our next question comes from Furret. They want to know: do you think banks should be bailed out if they fail?
Depends on the bank and it depends on the activity, but generally, yeah, probably. It's better than like letting our entire financial system collapse.
All right. Next question comes from Morse Code, and they ask: what's the best way someone can de-radicalize lefties, particularly Maoists? How can you get them to like social democracy, especially in a borderline third world country like the Philippines?
I don't know. I don't have like I don't have those answers. I just don't. I wish I did, but like people always ask me like, how do I de-radical? I don't know. I don't have. If I knew that, or if anybody knew that, then everybody would be doing it. But I don't think there was like an easy answer to any question like this ever.
All right. Our next question comes from Roratan. They want to know: should the USA have a totalitarian ally like Saudi Arabia from a moral perspective, and alternatively from a pragmatic perspective?
Yeah, the more allies, the better, always. 100%.
Okay.
I mean, we should probably, but that doesn't mean we can't pressure our allies into changing the way that they behave on things as well. But yeah.
Okay. Our next question comes from Dell, and they ask: do you think the Libertarian / Green Party / insert any other third party candidate should be allowed to take part in a presidential debate alongside Democrats and Republicans?
I mean, as long as they meet whatever vote threshold they need to, then yeah, sure.
Okay. Our next question comes from Whiskey. They ask: what are your thoughts on quantitative easing and the FED engaging in monetary policy?
What are my thoughts on the Fed engaging in monetary policy? I mean, I think the Fed should engage in monetary policy. It's literally the Fed's job. I don't. Is this like a libertarian asking like, should we abolish the Fed, or that's kind of what this sounds like? I mean, I think that central banking has probably been pretty good for the world and maintaining the stability of the like world's monetary supply. I think for the most part, the Fed does like a decent job. Or it feels like it. They've done a decent job at like curbing unemployment and inflation as much as the Fed could be expected to. What do I think about QE like specifically? Like I don't know. Like macroeconomics is like fucking witchcraft, and I'm pretty sure even macroeconomists like agree with that. So I don't have any. I'm not going to sit here and like pretend that I have like a very nuanced or strong opinion or like well informed opinion on like macroecon in general. That shit is weird as fuck.
Right. Our next question comes from hashtag. They want to know, how would you want to deal with the issue of politicization of scientific issues such as climate change, mask usage, and meat intake?
I have no idea. I don't know. I just stop stop politicizing like scientific fact or descriptive reality. I don't know how you stop that. Yeah.
All right. Our next question comes from Cool Tot, and they want to know, do you have any opinions or knowledge on modern monetary theory?
No, I don't. Most of the people that talk about it seem pretty memey. I don't care about it much. My understanding is that like most like new economists like incorporate all of the reasonable claims of MMT in current economic models. You don't need MMT to explain anything, and then MMT only exists so that like incredibly radical people online can talk about like infinite spending with no consequence or whatever other crazy shit they want to talk about. I don't know. I don't know strong opinions. I don't think about it much.
Okay. Our next question is from Pseudo Intellectual. They want to know, should we decrease the interest rate of our economy as it is right now or increase it?
The interest rate? Are they talking about like the Fed?
The question just says the interest rate of our economy.
I guess they're talking about the Fed. Isn't the interest rate already like at or near zero? I don't know. Should that be decreased more? Like, are they asking if we should do negative interest rates or? I don't think I have a good answer to this one. Sorry. Okay.
That's all right. Our next question comes from Furret. They want to know, waffles or pancakes, or is the choice of waffles or pancakes stupid?
I think that waffles are the more based option, but pancakes are more reasonable. You can't have waffles every day, okay? But you could have pancakes every day.
Okay. Our next question is from Z. They want to know, should privacy be an explicit right in the Constitution?
A right to privacy. I don't know. I guess like what kind of privacy?
Yeah, it's a bit of an open-ended question. Sorry about that. Our next question is from Mag.
Generally, I think in the US, I think usually less privacy is considered better in terms of like what you want for rights. Like you don't want the government having like private trials and like convicting people in like private rooms. Like you want all that to be like open to the public. Yeah, I guess I don't understand what they mean necessarily by privacy.
Okay. Our next question comes from Mag. They want to know, do you regret defending Kyle Rittenhouse last summer, and do you have any worries that it will come back to bite you when you are trying to work with Democrats to organize future campuses?
I don't think I defended Rittenhouse. I think I defend property rights and I defend people's like right to self-defense. And in that case, I still stand by everything I said. I've attacked Rittenhouse multiple times. I think it's really dumb. I would never drive across drive over to like another area to go and defend somebody else's fucking, but I think that's stupid as fuck. And I generally don't think it's probably worth it to risk like your life, especially for somebody else's business. But like if people want to defend their property against would-be like destroyers, like I mean, I support people's rights to do that always.
All right. Our next question is from Mike Escape. They want to know, would you rather fight a lion or a cheetah?
Probably a cheetah, I guess.
Our next question is from Lil Bill. They want to know, do you think the Capitol riot will lead to a Patriot Act 2.0?
Hopefully not, but we'll see.
And our next question is from probably Tim, and they ask, what is your dream car?
And like the price, dream car, I don't even know. I was thinking of like one of those like GTRs or like the Audi R8s seemed like really cool, and that big kind of up there in the price range, but in terms of dream car, I don't know. I'm not sure. I haven't thought about it much. Right now I live in LA and the fucking roads here are horrible. And every time you pull out of a gas station, even in my car, like my bumper like scrapes across the fucking street. So fuck this place. I don't know where you would drive nice cars at.
Okay, so our next question is from Whiskey. They want to know, What is your ideal way to reform the two-party system?
I don't think two-party systems are necessarily that bad. I think that people freak the fuck out about our two-party system. I don't think changing our two-party system would fix any of the problems that people seem to think it would fix. I think if you wanted to like for something to like meet those people in the middle, I think it'd be cool to get rid of first past the post. If you wanted to see like third parties become like a little bit more vibrant, or if you wanted to see more life in third parties, I think getting rid of first past the post would be a good idea. But like the obsession of like getting rid of a two-party system, like I don't know, I don't really care that much about it. Like I think that there's like a pretty wide amount of diversity of opinion like within the parties right now. If you look at the primary cycles, I think you see like pretty extreme differences in a lot of the candidates. So yeah, I don't know. I don't see us like being like, oh God, like we need a third party to represent this issue. Like I don't know, it just doesn't seem to be the case to me right now.
Right. Our next question is from Raven Wolf. They want to know which, if any, discussion that you've had online has been most influential in shaping your beliefs today. Have any made you change your mind entirely on a specific subject?
I've had arguments that have kind of like slowly shifted my opinion on like Citizens United. I used to think that was just like a horrible, evil thing, and now I think I'm generally in favor of it. Fuck, well, I'm sure there are other issues too. I just can't think of them right now off the top of my head. Oh, I guess like the idea that like corporations like control our political shit or whatever is something I used to believe a lot, but now I've like slowly changed on that. Like I don't know. Fuck, I don't keep track of everything that I don't keep track of like all of my opinions that have changed over time. Those are the two biggest ones I can think of though.
All right. Our next question is from Java Bolt. They want to know, do you think killing a pregnant woman should count as a double homicide?
Maybe, yeah. Probably, right? I guess like if you're killing somebody that somebody else doesn't want killed, at the very least, right? I think that's fucked up.
Our next question is from Batman Nerd. They want to know, what would you recommend for someone who is interested in philosophy to start learning? How would you go about learning about more complex topics?
I don't know. Go to the plato.stanford.edu and just start fucking reading. That's where that wiki is. Right. That's where I get all my info from.
Okay. Our next question is from Forehead. They ask, what are your thoughts on idealism, the idea that ideas shape history, compared to materialism, which is the idea that material conditions shape history?
Sounds like something that a lot of people way smarter than me have written a lot about. I don't have a strong opinion on it.
And well, you've just said you don't have a strong opinion on it, but the second part of this question says, to what extent do you accept idealism, as it seems to be a core tenet of liberalism?
You know what? I just don't fucking know. So I can't say. Sorry.
Fair enough.
Not well enough right into that. Yeah, sorry.
Our next question is from Electron. They want to know, how would you suggest a person try to identify themselves ideologically? If with tests, then which tests would you suggest?
I don't know. I don't know what the obsession is with like belonging to like a political group. Or I guess I understand humans like want to group themselves. I don't know. I just don't give a fuck. Yeah, I don't know. I like if I want to find out somebody's position on something, I just ask them, what is your position on this thing? The obsession of like what political party, blah blah blah. Like, I don't know. I don't care that much. I think people get obsessed a little bit about that too much too.
All right. Our next question is from Dio. They want to know, is a Cold War between China and the US inevitable, or has it already started?
Is a Cold War inevitable? I don't know. I mean, we're always in Cold War. I just finished Metal Gear Solid 2, so maybe we're infinitely in Cold War. I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know.
All right. Our next question is from Espresso. They want to know, do you believe the executive orders done by Biden is the opposite of unity, reversing all of the orders of Trump?
I think some of them were like pretty important, and on some things, like there's just right or wrong answers. Like I'm pretty sure like one of the orders is like mandating like masks to be worn on federal property. Like I'm not interested in looking for unity on that issue. Like this is like a right or wrong thing, and if you disagree, then I don't really care. Yeah, I don't know. I think that for the most part, I think Biden has done a good job at trying to be like pretty bipartisan. Like I think it was his press secretary that when people were like, oh, like, do you think that Biden isn't focusing enough on like bipartisan issues? And I think her response, you know, like, oh, don't you think opening schools or don't you think keeping America safe are these bipartisan issues, like protecting businesses? So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Give him more than 2 days. We'll see how it goes. Ask him in a couple of weeks.
All right. Our next question comes from The Great Filter. They want to know, In light of your announcement that you'll be aiding a candidate running for mayor of Nebraska, what is your advice for people who wish to begin participating in local politics?
I don't know, get a few friends together and then see if you can get more and more and more people and then organize like canvassing groups and stuff. I think you'll be surprised at the audience you can get with politicians, with local politicians that'll like listen to you and give you the time of day.
Okay. Our next question is from Quit That Stalin, and they want to know, seeing how a lot of people are asking about Vorsh, what are your thoughts on anarchism?
Cringe.
Okay.
is cool.
Okay. Our next question is from Blip. They want to know, how do you think Joe Manchin will vote on certain policies from Joe Biden's agenda?
As you'd expect, a very moderate Dem 2 vote. You probably vote in agreement with the Democratic Party most of the time, and you might break on like the more extreme issues that they take up.
Okay. Mike Escape wants to know, what are your thoughts on Cyberpunk 2077?
Haven't played it yet. Ask me in a couple of weeks, and I'll have more thoughts on it.
All right. Atelex wants to know, I think you kind of answered this earlier actually, but it's slightly worded different. They want to know, what is the most significant instance of you having changed your mind on a topic, and what was the flaw in the previous way you were thinking about that topic?
It was Citizens United. The existence of super PACs seemed bad, but the biggest flaw is I didn't consider the other end. Like, okay, well, let's say that we make it illegal to advertise
for like political related stuff before elections. You know, like, well, what would that look like? Does that mean that I'm not allowed to advertise? Like, let's say I want to make a documentary and advertise it, you know, like 30 days before an election about climate change. Am I now banned from doing that because that would be considered like election interference? Yeah.
Okay. I think we're actually coming to the end here because we do seem to be running out of questions.
Wait, okay. Also, hold on. Sorry, because I just read dumb things.
Yep.
Science disagrees with you. Not all life is valuable, but yes, life begins at conception. Science does not define what life is. That's a question of philosophy. These are philosophical questions. A lot of people make this mistake where they take definitions from certain like rigorous scientific disciplines and then they pretend that those definitions came from those rigorous scientific disciplines. Philosophical questions precede all forms of categorization. You can't categorize things without first engaging in philosophy. Those things don't come from science. There is no scientific analysis that you can conduct on any life form ever that will say like, oh, look, this is alive. I know because biology told me. No, wrong. It's because you made the philosophical quandary of asking, like, well, what is life? Oh, well, life is when something, you know, like processes energy or, you know, changes over time or reproduces. Like, these are philosophical questions. These aren't answered by biology. These are given, and then you work with these. These become part of your framework of how you approach these scientific disciplines. But the construction of that framework is a philosophical question. Science can never answer the question of when does life begin, because that question is very squarely a philosophical one. Sorry. Okay.
All right. Our next question is from Southwest. They want to know, what is your position on the British Union of BDIs, and do you agree with their mission statement to light together in Britain a flame that the ages shall not extinguish?
I have no fucking idea what any of that means or what it is, so I can't say.
Okay. Our next question is from Dude Nah. They want to know, have you ever considered playing Destiny the game?
I tried to once, but I just didn't care that much about it. Maybe in the future, we'll see.
Okay. Our next question is from Jado the Thrid. They want to know, what do you think is the biggest issue facing America right now?
I mean, right now it's the coronavirus related stuff for sure. And then after that, it will be, this is very broad, but like the economy. Yeah.
All right. Our next question is from Pack. They want to know, how do you think on your feet so well? Have you always been into debate, and what did you do before streaming?
Honestly, most of what people see is like thing on my feet. It's usually just I've heard the question before and I've had a lot of time to think about something before I answer the question. So like what comes across is like, oh, like you think really well on your feet. It's like, well, no, this is just an answer I've given like 30 times before. And I'm like slightly reforming it to fit like this particular context. So yeah, most of it is just practice. Like you have to consider that like what you do for work 8 hours a day, you can probably do very well. And this is just what I do for 8 hours every day. Like I talk all the time on my stream. So I should be like pretty decent at it, I think. I've been lucky enough to be able to do this for a long time. So
okay. Our next question is from Denuve. They want to know, how do you go about finding true information in a sort of third world country with huge media blackout?
I have no fucking idea. I don't know. I've never lived in a third world country or been in a media blackout country, so I have no fucking idea.
Okay. Rika wants to know, Do you think there's a pattern of lefty radicalization in places such as LGBT communities online usually? And if so, why do you think this
I
is?
don't know, but it does seem to be the case online. Like LGBT communities, sex worker communities, there seems to be like, in order to even be in these communities, you have to be like extremely fucking like hardcore left in like a cringe way. Like you're a socialist, not like you're just like very, like left leaning or whatever. You have to be like a socialist or whatever to make it. I don't know why. It's really cringe to me. Hopefully that changes going forward, but.
Okay. Our next question also comes from Bricker, and they ask, would you ever talk to Hakeem, or is the lefty arc over?
I mean, I'm thinking I'd still talk to anybody who wants to talk.
All right. Our next question, leading from that, is from Atelex, and they want to know, what is your understanding of worker cooperatives and their performance relative to traditional firms in terms of productivity or working conditions?
I've seen like so much mixed stuff. I don't have a strong opinion on them. Like co-ops apparently work better in some industries than others for reasons I don't fully understand. But like, yeah, I don't have like any strong like pulls towards like worker co-ops or like capital owned firms or whatever. Like if co-ops and capital owned firms like functioned similarly in terms of productivity, I'd probably tend towards the co-ops because it would be a better way of redistributing wealth like in a natural manner rather than an unnatural manner, right? Like if there was only one firm in the United States and that firm had a billionaire at the top, and I could either choose to tax all of his earnings and then give it to the lower class people, or if I could just choose that like all the people had like an equal share in the company and they all got the earnings naturally, like I'd probably tend towards the latter. It seems like a more efficient way to allocate income in society. Maybe. So yeah, like whatever works. I don't care. If co-ops work, then yeah, fucking amen to co-ops. Like, and I think there's even things we could probably do better in society to encourage co-ops to see if they work better, right? Preferential business loans and whatnot from banks on it. So yeah.
Okay. Our next question comes from Brave Soldier. Now, you briefly mentioned earlier that you thought the greatest threat facing America was the economy and COVID-19. But Brave Soldier asks, don't you think misinformation is the most dangerous threat to America and the world?
Well, yeah, sure, I would agree with that, but I don't think other people agree, and I don't know how the government could go about addressing that. But yeah, I mean, I would say misinformation. That's actually true. Yeah, but I was thinking more in terms of like, oh, like what can the president or what can our legislators do? And I don't know what they can do about misinformation, unfortunately.
Okay. Farrett wants to know, what is your favorite video game?
I'm probably just gonna give a nostalgic answer and say Final Fantasy VII.
Nice one.
Final Fantasy VII, the original, not whatever came out a year or two ago, whatever that was.
Yeah.
Kingdom Hearts 3 remake or whatever. Yeah, Jesus, sorry.
It's all right. Our next question is from Fluffy. They want to know, what is your opinion on nations binding themselves together through a union similar to the EU?
Based as fuck. Strength in numbers.
Okay. Our next question is from Timeless. They want to know, what is your opinion on the industrial workers of the world?
I don't know enough about it. Is that like a labor union or organization or something? I don't know enough about it to have an opinion.
Okay. Dio wants to know, what is the best drama on Twitch right now?
We're in kind of a drama drought right now, and there's not much cool shit. The meta hasn't lent itself well over the past few game cycles. The Among Us drama was all very fucking boring. Just like, oh god, that guy was me, that guy playing. The Rust drama was very fucking boring. There was a drama that I was involved in with Bob and everything. I thought that was pretty boring. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's like very much good drama. We need another game to come out that is good, a good drama machine, because everything right now sucks.
All right. Our next question comes from Provo Lateriat, and they want to know, do you think hate speech laws will be introduced in the Biden-Harris administration?
I don't know. I hope not. That'd be pretty scary, but I don't know.
Okay. Our next question is from Wingman Merlin, and they want to know, should all drugs be legal and in a regulated marketplace?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Our next question comes from Wes Lazy, and they want to know, how exactly would you say the government plays a role in society?
I don't know how I'm supposed to. I mean, the government plays every role. I mean, the government can determine your public transport, the reparations, the repaired state of your roads. Like they determine like schooling, like your tax policy, like what jobs exist, like how corporations are regulated. I don't know how to answer that question. It's by doing things. Yeah, is how they determine its role in society, I guess.
Okay. Our next question is from Doomdoll, and they want to know: do you think more countries, such as Germany, Japan, or South Korea, should get nukes?
I would have to think a lot more on this. I'm not sure. I've heard arguments in both ways that nuclear weapons ensure like a form of peace, basically, because as countries acquire nukes, they become less fuckable with. But then I've heard obviously the more countries that have nukes, the higher the likelihood you have of some kind of nuclear altercation, which is obviously not good. So yeah, I don't know. I lean towards thinking my gut feeling is that probably the less nukes, the better. It's my gut feeling, but I don't know. I could be wrong on that.
Okay. Our next question is from Mike Escape, and they want to know: do you think it was excessive that Tehran players in StarCraft 2 were rooting against each other for favorable balance patches?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Race realism is probably less contentious than balance issues of the races in StarCraft. So I'll leave that one alone for now. This isn't the appropriate forum to discuss that.
All right. Our next question comes from Kate, and they want to know: how big of a role do you believe that religion plays in politics in the United States?
It's probably still quite a large one, especially for older people. But I mean, the role of religion is going to diminish as time goes on. I think as newer generations are kind of like less and less hardcore religious.
Okay. Our next question is from Wingman Merlin, and they ask: what is your opinion of the United States' involvement in the Syrian civil war? Are our actions justified in aiding religious extremists?
Man, I should have like a comprehensive opinion on this. I think my gut right now is that we probably shouldn't have been involved at all. It's like that's like my gut. I think that my feeling is that America saw it as a convenient opportunity to get rid of Assad, because it was like kind of loyalism to Putin. I feel like we probably shouldn't have been involved in that at all. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with that. But foreign policy is really, really, really hard.
Okay. Our next question is from Skull Candy. They want to know: how come you don't look more into Germany as a source for US alternatives, as they are also a federal democracy?
I mean, I would, I guess. What do you mean? Like Germany does like education and healthcare better than the United States does at the very least.
All right. Our next question is from Furret. They want to know: what is your opinion on JREG?
He seems like a funny guy. I don't know what his actual political opinions are, so maybe my opinions on him would change if I knew. But based on everything I've seen, he seems like a cool dude.
Yeah, I don't think anyone knows anything about his opinions.
Mhm.
Next is from Kate, and they want to know: do you believe that the US presidential system is preferable to the UK's parliamentary system, and why or why not?
Um, I think so. I like the idea of our bicameral legislature. I I've had Brits try to explain to me why the House of Lords maybe isn't the worst thing in the world. I think it's incredibly fucking stupid. But supposedly they don't have that much political power anyway. I don't know. I would have to have like a thorough understanding of both systems to like truly compare and contrast the two. And honestly, I just don't know the UK's like well enough to say. I like the US's system, and yeah, I'll go with that. I'll leave it there. I don't think I know enough about the British system to like have like a deeply nuanced take of like how I feel about it compared to the US one.
Okay. Our next question is from Pack. They want to know: will you ever be partnered with Twitch again, or have they given you any update on returning?
Twitch doesn't communicate with me at all, so no update at all. Whether or not I would return or not, I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to think about it a lot. Because streaming to YouTube has been fun.
All right. Our next question is from Jodeci, and they want to know: how do you feel about the original Black Panther Party, and should its political prisoners be pardoned by the Biden-Harris administration?
It would depend on what they were arrested for, I guess. If it was for like bombing and shit, I probably am not in favor of that. But if it was just like politically related issues, I probably would be in favor of that. But I don't know why the ones that were imprisoned were originally imprisoned.
Okay. And what are your thoughts on the Black Panther Party?
My understanding today is that the Black Panthers of today are far different than the Black Panthers of the past. the Black Panthers, like in their founding or whatever, were mainly like a civil rights related group or whatever that thought maybe violent means were necessary to do it. But today the mission has changed quite a bit. So I don't know. I haven't like read enough on what they do or their activities or whatever to have a strong opinion right now on how they exist.
Okay. Our next question is from Adbem, and they want to know, what are your 3 most important changes that you would want for the American school system?
Fuck, I don't know. For the American school system, I feel like education in the US needs to like radically change. I don't know if it would just be like 3 small changes. Like, I mean, in terms of working within the current system, like smaller class sizes are probably important. Making sure that like all students have access to like things like technology and stuff is probably important. Yeah, that's all I can think of. And then like I guess like access to like colleges would be nice. Like nobody shouldn't be able to go to school just because he can't afford it is probably like a good idea. Yeah. In terms of like radically redesigning it, like I'm not sure. I keep wanting to read more. I hear that like different countries around the world try different things with education. Like, is it Finland? I think that like has like a radically different approach. I think, and they're like the number 1 in the world. I think they go back and forth with South Korea in terms of like student achievement. So I don't know. I'd probably just look at whatever they're doing and then copy their ideas.
All right. Our next question is from Super Curious, and they want to know, do you think pirating media is wrong? And then there's a follow-up question to this.
I think in general, you probably should avoid it if you can. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Sorry. They also ask, what about people proliferating and creating pirated media?
Creating pirated media. What do you mean by that?
I think they mean to say something along the lines of creating media that's already been made, but for free.
Like pirating? Or wait, what does that mean?
I'm not completely sure. I think the question's worded a bit weirdly. We'll just move on to the next one.
Okay.
Dio wants to know, when is the next Jesse Lee Peterson interview?
I have no idea right now. We'll see.
All right. Our next question is from Brett, and they want to know, I live in Huntington Beach, California, and found out a couple weeks ago you live here, but in the future are planning on moving back to Nebraska. I also want to move out of here. Can you give me an explanation as to why you are leaving and if others should do the same?
It just comes down to like where I have the most friends and then where the opportunities are for creating content and stuff. My fiance really doesn't like living in Huntington Beach, and I know like a lot of streamers that live in Austin, so I'm probably moving down there. And then financially, it makes more sense as well. Like California is super fucking high taxes, and the cost of living here is very, very fucking high too. So I'm not 100% sure if it's worth like being here at the moment.
Okay. And then our next question is from Dio, and they want to know, what is your opinion on r/livestream fails?
Seems like a crazy place, crazy people.
Okay. Our next question is from Skull Candy. They want to know, how do you feel about misinformation and how to combat it going forward, as it had a significant impact on the latest election?
Misinformation is bad, and we should combat it going forward. I don't know how, but it's a bad thing. Yeah, I don't know. So obviously, I think it's horrible, but I don't know what the solution is going forward.
Okay. Our next question is from Doomdoll, and they want to know, do you think 3D printing of firearms should be legal?
Probably. But I guess we'll see how it plays out. I mean, if people start 3D printing a whole bunch of firearms for like gangs or some shit, that'd probably be bad. But I mean, how do you make something like that illegal? I don't know. Okay. I'm not sure. I'd have to think about that a lot. I'm not sure.
All right. Our next question is from Rika, and they want to know, should North Korea have nukes?
I'm not a big fan of North Korea personally, so I would say no.
Okay. Kid Corey Dude wants to know, how do you feel about raising children from a faith-based approach?
I'm not a really big fan of religion, so fuck that.
Okay. Morse Code wants to know, what is your opinion on lefties saying social democracy only working when first world countries exploit third world ones?
Doesn't everybody exploit third world countries? I mean, I'm sure we could make it work without doing it. It would just cost a little bit more, right?
Yeah. Our next question is from Talos, and they want to know, what are some ways that non-influencers can get more involved in politics?
Like I said earlier, like grab a group of friends and see if you can like volunteer to like canvas or start getting involved locally with your political movements. And if you're like super driven to do it, and if you can get a group of friends like with you doing it, I think you can actually get a surprising amount of political influence on a local level by doing so.
All right. Our next question is from Timeless, and they want to know: do you support boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel for their neo-colonialism towards Palestine?
That's a tough issue, bro. Palestine and Israel is like one of the rougher things in terms of like who's on the right or who's on the wrong. I hope that the United States takes a better approach than just like completely cucking out to Israel in terms of how they deal with it. I guess we'll see under Biden what he wants to do. However, it seems like the majority of the United States and then the left and right political parties are like very, very big, like pro-Israel. So yeah, I guess we'll see what happens.
All right. Our next question is from Whiskey. They want to know: what do you think about internalizing economic externalities via subsidies or taxation? Do you think there are more effective ways to correct market externalities?
I feel like that's actually the most effective way of dealing with things. Like I want to I don't remember where I read this article, but I thought recently carbon taxes were like the best, like one of the most effective means at combating the amount of pollution that companies are creating. So finding ways to internalize those like negative externalities using market forces with like government programs or like government like penalties and shit seems to be a really effective means of dealing with things. When you start to like incentivize or disincentivize things with tax policies or penalties, I think that it seems to be a really positive way to address things. Yeah, from my understanding of what I read about the effectiveness of carbon credits.
Okay. Our next question is from Fluffy, and they want to know: how do you see China on the world stage? Do you see them as a hostile nation and we should do our best to take down, or do you think we should work on building a friendship with them and coexist?
I mean, the friendship would be awesome, but I mean, I don't know. It feels like we would have different ideas on how the world should be ran. So it seems like we're probably going to be at ends with each other. I don't know how we work together going forward, but I think adversarial is an okay relationship to have with them. Enemy probably is a little bit too extreme, but friend, I don't know if it works because of how different the two countries approach politics. So I'm not sure.
All right. Our next question is from Skull Candy. They want to know: trailers or teasers? Which one do you prefer?
I guess probably a teaser.
All right. Our next question is from Rel, and they want to know: should Congress members be allowed to serve in districts that they don't live in?
Probably, yeah. I don't like that idea, but I mean, if people vote for them, I mean, it's kind of on them, right? Like, if they want to be represented by a certain thing, like, should you tell people like, no, you're not allowed to vote for that person? I mean, like, if they really want to, I guess. Personally, I think it's kind of dumb, but.
All right. Our next question is from Kid Corey Dude, and they want to know: should we change the age to buy alcohol to 18 to match the rest of the world?
Probably, yeah. It seems a little bit weird that you can do the military shit at 18, but you can't do alcohol stuff. That seems really strange to me.
All right. We are coming down to our last 5 questions now, if that's all right. So our next one comes from Rel, and they want to know: what do you think about slavery slash Jim Crow reparations?
I think right now, I think I fall on the side of like, I think cash reparations should probably be paid. It seems like there were promises made to African Americans, to ex-slaves, that were like walked back on in the U.S. government, and we should probably make right on that. So I think right now I'm like pretty warm towards the idea of reparations.
Okay. Our next question is from Brett. They want to know: do you believe that there is a difference in the quality of living between cities, suburbs, and rural areas? And if so, which environment do you think offers the highest standard of living for middle/working class people?
Fuck, it depends on what your job is. Like if you're a working class or whatever, but you want to work on a farm or whatever, and you're probably living like in a very rural area, right? But if you're middle class and you want to work in the city, or working class, but you work in the city, you can probably afford some suburbs. Like that's like such a variable question. It depends on like the cities you're talking about, the suburbs you're talking about, the jobs you're talking about. I don't know if I can give like a more specific answer to that. That's like super depends on like the types of jobs you're working and like the type of life you want, you know? Some people really fucking hate suburb life. Some people really fucking like suburb life. Like after living in suburbs for 30 years of my life and now like living in cities, I don't know if I could ever go back to wanting to live in a suburb ever because fuck. So yeah, I don't know. Just that's a super variable question.
Okay, so we're down to our last three now. Our next one is from Runaway Feline, and they want to know, even though your ideologies are very leftist, you're always shitting on lefties. Why the factionalism in your political views?
Lefties make me look worse, and I have to spend all my time like answering for their shitty takes. And then also lefties are just kind of like the loudest group of people right now online, so they're the ones that you have to deal with the most. And then they often give like really dumb and brainless takes about everything too. So it's how it ends up being.
All right. Our second last question is from Sergeant Jelly Bellies, and they want to know, have you considered starting research streams into or debating proponents of QAnon and other conspiracy theories?
The problem is conspiracy theories require so much time to debunk, and it's usually just not worth it. It's not fun to go into them hardcore. Like they're usually fringe and not many people believe in it. And then you also like people that are conspiracy theorists will oftentimes like update the fuck out of their beliefs too. So they're like constantly have like new like conspiracy shit to talk about. So like, I don't know. It's just not a topic that I'm that interested in. Fuck that.
All right. And our final question comes from Doomdoll, and they want to know, are you going to take the COVID vaccine or hope that a majority of people take it so that you don't have to?
No, I'll get it as soon as it's available to me. Although I'm not like a healthcare worker or anything, so I don't know when that's going to be. But
okay, excellent. So that is all the questions for today. Would you like to give a closing statement before we completely wrap up?
Yeah. Wait. Why the Southwest guy said like 5 times in chat? He's like, he's lucky the mics are muted. Wait, what the fuck does this guy want to ask? Why is he so riled up in chat?
I'm not completely sure on that one. We keep all of the users muted apart from the AMA guests and the host. So,
okay. Sorry. Final shout outs. No, thanks for having me and chatting. And if you want to watch my stream or my YouTube, I'm twitch.tv/Destiny and youtube.com/Destiny. And
yeah, thank you very much for coming on. For people in the Twitch chat, our Discord chat is discord.gg/bluepolitics. Hope you've had fun.